What's up, guys? Welcome back to Flicks Mix. I'm your host, Harrison, joined by,
Josh.
and this is a podcast where we talk about movies, discuss what they're about, what we like and dislike, and just general thoughts we have. I'm pretty excited. I'm not gonna lie. This is our second episode where we watched King of Comedy. If you guys notice anything about my audio, hopefully that it is significantly better. I literally went out and bought a microphone that was like $100 to just
Compensate. To
compensate for
absolutely
how trash my audio was. It was so embarrassing to me, like editing the whole podcast, because I don't know, I was just kind of like, this sucks. Because I was
honestly
I was
like
happy with what we said, but I wasn't happy with how I sounded the whole time, and like cringing the whole hour and 20 minutes of me just sounding like I was talking to a potato.
it sounded like you were on FaceTime with me and I was like you're just we were hearing you through my phone is what it sounded like for a little
Yeah,
bit.
it sounded like I was on speakerphone and we just recorded it on like a potato. Was really bad, but hopefully this week I sound a lot better. If I don't, I'm probably gonna have to like figure something out because that would be really weird if I sounded really bad with a nice microphone.
It's actually the second episode this week that we're dropping.
Yeah,
And
so
it's Super Bowl Sunday, which no one's dropping a podcast on Super Bowl Sunday.
well,
So
it's not, it's like noon Super Bowl Sunday, so the festivities haven't started yet.
yeah, most people are pre-gaming. We are potting.
Well, we did stay up last night and watch King of Comedy together. We had a little watch party on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we did. It was really fun, actually. I've never done a watch party like that. And for some reason, I was envisioning like I could see your face. It's kind of like a FaceTime, but we're just watching the same movie. But really, it was just like a chat box that we're just watching it at the same time.
Yeah, we would just make like small little comments, commenting on like random things throughout the movie,
Yeah, exactly.
which was pretty funny.
It was pretty funny. It was a
I've done
perfect
one.
movie to do it to as well because it was. I mean, it wasn't that long,
Yeah, it was like
and
an hour and 50 minutes or something.
it was easy.
I've done watch parties before, but just, I mean, on like Netflix and stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was in the car yesterday, and I was just thinking about movies that like I didn't get to watch last year because I was gone for 5 months. I was at basic, and I was just thinking like, what movies would I want to experience like in the theaters? And I just wanted to ask you like, what's a movie that you wish you got to see for like the first time in theaters that you've never seen in theaters?
oh
That makes
wow,
sense.
that's a good one. Probably any of this, like the original like trilogy of the Star Wars movies,
Oh, that'd be
because
sick. Yep.
obviously those are like cult classics and they like change cinema forever. But you know, back then going to the movies and going to a Star Wars movies, the crowds were insane and everybody would like dress up, and I just feel like the atmosphere would be like super super cool. Plus it's like the 70s and 80s, so I don't know, I think it'd be cool to see a movie during that period of time, and just the Star Wars movies are like one of the most popular.
Right. And just to be able to say that you were there like opening day of the first ever Star Wars, like before we even knew it was like going to be such a
Yeah.
big franchise and then eventually like getting taken over, like that would have been super cool. And I was trying to think of like old movies that I wanted to see. But honestly, to be honest, I wish if I could go back, like even just a couple months ago, watching Dune in theaters would have
Yeah,
been
did you
sick.
not you never have you seen Dune yet?
I haven't even seen Dune yet because it's not on any streaming platforms right now, and it's not in theaters. It's
Oh, did they
probably
take it
about to.
off?
It's probably
Yeah.
about to come. It's probably about to come on Blu-ray or 4K or something, which
Yeah.
that's probably the second best way to watch it. But I wish I could have saw Dune or even like Blade Runner 2049. Just seeing the most incredible movies to watch like visually, just being able to see those on screen, like that's obviously what it's meant for. But I was just super bummed out. That's what I was thinking about. As in the car, I was like, Man, I'm never gonna get to experience Dune, at least the first part, like in theaters, and it sucks. That sucks.
Can I tell my Dune story?
Yeah.
So I saw Dune twice in the theaters, and I have HBO Max, and I saw that it was on HBO Max, but I wasn't gonna watch it because I would prefer to watch a movie that's brand new in the theaters, of course. Especially, I was really excited for Dune because all the the director and all the actors that were in it. There was a huge cast that had a bunch of
Timothy
just really
Chalamet.
yeah, Timothy Chalamet and just a bunch of other talented people, and I was super excited, and obviously, movies always come out on Fridays, but for some reason, like, they like, I the Batman movie comes out March 4th, but you can see it March 3rd on a Thursday. They release movies on Thursdays, like, for every big, like, movie that comes out on a Friday, they always
It's usually like super late too, like 10 o'clock towards midnight.
well, it used to be, but now there's like they have showtimes all day on Thursdays, so
Oh, really?
I don't really get it. So I really wanted to see it the day it came out. And so Thursday was the day that it came out and I wanted to go see it. But obviously I'm in college right now and people have a lot of classes on Fridays and I didn't want to I only got tickets to like the 9 o'clock showing and this is like a 3 hour movie. And so if I went and saw it with somebody, it would have been like we would have gotten back at like 1 o'clock in the morning and then they would have to go to class at like 9.
Yeah.
And so I just went and saw it by myself, and it was pretty like it was like the first time I've ever like saw a movie by myself, and it was people always are like, "Oh, that's so sad," or "That's so lame," but like I thought it was like super fun because I didn't have to worry about anybody. Nobody was like asking me questions or like bothering me. Just got to walk in the movie theater, grab my popcorn, and enjoy my movie, and then walk out. And then I left, and I came back.
Honestly,
It
I've never
worked.
watched a movie in theaters by myself, but I am so down because the thing that bothers me the most is when I'm watching a movie, and it's usually one that I've suggested that we go see or that I go see with somebody. And the whole time I'm just thinking about what they're thinking about the movie. So I'm like, I'm just thinking in my head, do they like this? Like, what are they thinking about? And it just always like distracts me. Plus, half the time, like, there's, usually distractions. People are getting up, people are moving, but I would be totally down to see a movie by myself. And that's honestly probably what I'm going to have to start doing this year when better movies start coming out. I even might see Batman alone for the first time because if it comes out on that Thursday, I'm going to be in Lansing. So there's not really anybody here that's going to go watch it with me right now.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to do that. Um,
I
but
mean,
other than that,
obviously, you want to go see a movie with somebody if you can, but the stigma that you have to go with to a movie with someone is like completely false. Like I went to a movie and saw Dune and it was great and I had a great time. Like when you go to a movie and you're watching a movie, you're not talking to somebody. So there's like
right.
you don't really need somebody. Like obviously when you walk out of the movie, I didn't get to talk about Dune with anybody and I was super excited about it and I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't because I went alone. But you miss that conversation after you watch a really good
Mhm.
movie, but that's about it. But obviously, watching a movie with people is still, like, one of the best things, but watching a movie alone, like, I watch movies alone in my room, obviously, all the time, and s I mean, I don't know.
Well, I really like watching movies at home, and I know obviously the theater's the best experience you can have as far as like most movies are supposed to be enjoyed in a theaters on the big screen, multiple sounds, systems and everything like that, but watching movies at my house, just being able to like sometimes legitimately just turning my phone off, like usually it's later at night, and having no distractions whatsoever and just watching the movie, whether it's one I've seen or one I haven't seen, like that's the best. That's the best experience for me, honestly, is watching at home like a movie that you're watching for the first time. It's awesome.
Especially, like, when I watch a movie with my family, we spend, like, an hour and a half or, like, an hour trying to pick out a movie that all of us will agree on,
Yeah,
and if I am watching one by myself at night, then I just get to pick the first one that I'm interested in. And sometimes
it's
that's sometimes that's a
Exactly.
good thing because I just pick a random movie because it seems interesting and it turns out to be really good, or sometimes I pick a random movie and it turns out to be awful and I just wasted my night. But because I did that once with the it was called Eraserhead, and it's like it's known to be like super amazing and like a I don't know if it's a horror movie, but it's one of those super weird movies. Maybe we can even talk about it one episode because it's like super unique
I've
and
heard of this
confusing.
movie.
Yeah, so I watched it alone on like a Thursday night, before I went to bed. And it's one of those like super conceptual movies and like has no real meaning. You just kind of have to like think about it. And it was like the worst experience because like I was tired and I kind of just wanted it to shut it off, but I was already so far into it where I couldn't. And I was just like, can this end? And I think I need to rewatch it because I didn't think I liked it that much, but I know it's like good. Technically, it's a good movie. Like, everything that's being done in the movie is being done well. I just did not enjoy my experience, so definitely have to rewatch it.
Well, it's different, or it's weird for me because you walk out of a movie theater and sometimes you're just completely like that's all you think about is the movie. I remember watching like Uncut Gems. 2019 was a big year, like watching Joker in theaters
Oh,
and
yeah.
coming out and it just being amazing. And especially in 2019, obviously before COVID, like that's when we're all going to the theaters a lot and watching some of those really great movies in theaters. But I didn't see Uncut Gems in theaters. I watched it at my house after it came out on Blu-ray, and I had like a completely different experience watching it just alone. I woke up like early one morning to watch it. Woke up at like 6 a.m. to watch it before class or something. And I just remember like my whole day just thinking about Uncut Gems and it just blew my mind. And I think it was I kind of preferred watching it at my house than in a theater, but I don't know.
I remember when I watched Uncut Gems for the first time. I watched it on Netflix just kinda, like, by myself one day, and
It's
then
crazy.
I was at, uh I was at home, and then immediately after I watched it, I went to my dad, was like, "We need to watch this." And I've done that a few times with movies where I'll just watch them, and then immediately after, I'd be like, "I have to share this with people. Other people need to see this." And usually it's my parents, because obviously still live with my parents. So I did that with Whiplash as well, where I watched
Mhm.
Whiplash, and then as soon as I watched it, I was like, "That was incredible." I ran downstairs, was like, "We need to watch Whiplash," and we did, and I watched it twice in the same day back to back. So 4 hours of, like, watching the same movie. I didn't do that with Uncut Gems, I just watched it and then recommended it to my dad, said, "You should watch it right now," and he turned it on, and I think he was, like, doing something or, like, cooking or doing something while he had it on, and so he wasn't really paying attention, so that kinda hurt my soul
Yeah, that's
because
tough.
it's a great movie, but, oh
That's definitely
well.
one you can't be you gotta totally be invested in watching it, and obviously, like, there's nothing that beats watching anything in theaters, but you can kinda have this experience when you watch it, like, alone in your apartment or in your room, that you can get in theaters as well, so it's a little different. However, King of Comedy, did not see it in theaters, obviously watched it last night.
Yeah.
I say let's get into it.
Alright, King of Comedy. So, came out in 1983, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, and that's probably the most notable actor in the film, or I guess only relevant actor that people would know, because I could
For
say,
sure.
like, all the older ones and people probably wouldn't know who they were. Most of them are actually dead, so they haven't really been active in the, film industry recently. So it has an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, if people still care about Rotten Tomatoes, that's a good score. So
Pretty
89% on.
low for, Scorsese.
Yeah, but I don't know. Spider-Man: No Way Home is like 98% or like 95. So, and then like Paddington 2 is apparently the best rated movie of all time. So, Rotten Tomatoes is kind of a weird rating system. So yeah, King of Comedy. Do you want to do one sentence summaries?
Yeah, so my one sentence summary to sum this entire movie up in one sentence is a wannabe comedian does whatever it takes to be seen by the world.
Yeah, I mean, I would basically say the same thing, but I would throw in like a comedian that's how do I say it? Like a non-famous comedian. Because it's not like he's a failed comedian. He just hasn't really tried.
I just said wannabe comedian,
Yeah, so a wannabe comedian obsessed with success does anything he can to be famous. And I think a lot of it has to do with him wanting to be famous instead of like, no, I guess he also wants to be like a comedian. So he also wants to be successful in what he does,
but
but he
fame
also,
fame is what he's chasing. I don't think,
yeah.
and he's just using comedy to get famous because that's who he
Hmm.
looks up to. But I think his main thing is being famous. That's really
Yeah.
all he cares about.
So non-spoiler talk. It's a great movie. Like we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't a great movie, and didn't recommend it to Josh for no reason. It I think one thing that we do have to bring up is it's how close it is to Joker. Like this is one of
Yeah,
the
that
reasons why I
is
wanted to talk about it.
so weird. I could
So
I could not help but this whole time, and I was even texting in the chat. It's just Joker. Like the like multiple scenes in the movie in Joker reflect movie or scenes in this movie as well. It was so similar. And I guess you could talk about Taxi Driver as well as another
yeah,
um movie
I think less
Scorsese
so
did.
Taxi Driver though.
Less of Taxi Driver and definitely more of King of Comedy. And I could not stop thinking about that. And I remember when Joker came out, that was always the criticism was he was everybody said he was stealing, and that's where I'm kind of stuck at is he stealing or is he just kind of paying respects to movies that talking about Todd Phillips, movies that he respected growing up, is he like trying to honor those movies by putting it into Joker? Because I think Joker is very similar structure as this movie as well, but honestly, I really like Joker. I think we both really, really enjoyed Joker,
Yeah, I
and I
saw
don't
Joker like 3 times.
same, and I don't think this takes away from Joker, knowing that it's so similar to King of Comedy because there are some differences, and he's not straight up stealing. I think there's some things that he uses the same concept, but puts his own spin on it, which to me makes it a little bit more okay than just straight up copying it, stealing it, scene for scene, shot for shot. Todd Phillips definitely puts his style on Joker. And for the most part, I mean, the movie's completely different and kind of about different things. So it's not a straight up steal, but there's definitely a lot of influence that this movie had in the making of Joker for sure. More than Taxi Driver, I think.
Yeah, so I'm gonna agree to disagree. So obviously Joker was a big budget movie and it made hundreds of millions of dollars. So compared to, King of Comedy where it didn't make that much in a time where movies weren't making that amount of money.
It flopped. Honestly, it flopped. No one saw it opening night. I'm talking about King of Comedy.
Oh, did you research that?
Yeah, I even saw that like Martin Scorsese was watching it was some TV show or something, and people like kind of hated the movie, and one of them called it like the biggest flop because, or as far as Scorsese, like there's high hopes for this movie, and then people either one didn't get it or two like didn't like the message because it was just coming after an age of movies that it was just really different.
Yeah.
So
So like I think Joker is an incredible movie. I think aesthetically it looks amazing. The score is amazing. The
Joaquin
performance,
Phoenix,
yeah, the performances and especially Joaquin Phoenix was like incredible. And I think the movie on its own is like really, really good. It's obviously not a perfect movie. One of the best of 2019 for sure. But when I watched Joker for the first time, I thought it was incredible and like it was amazing. And then after I watched King of Comedy, I felt less about Joker than I did originally because King of Comedy, I feel like, yeah, Joker did. take inspiration from King of Comedy, but and they even had Robert De Niro in the movie as, like, an homage to King of Comedy. But what really draws the line from, like, inspiration to, like, just kinda downright copying? Like, there are scenes in Joker and in King of Comedy that are so similar. It's kinda like you watch it and you're like, "That's kinda weird. Why would they both kinda do that?" And King of Comedy obviously did that first, so you think about that and it's like, yeah, he's copying, like, direct scenes, and it's like, you can't is that inspiration or is that just, like, direct copying? And I don't know if Todd Phillips if that was, like, the goal or wasn't, but it just watching King of Comedy, I've seen it twice now. It just the more I watch it and the more I watch Joker, the more similarities I see in the it takes away from Joker, definitely. Especially, like, Taxi Driver has some similarities, I would say less so, but just Martin Scorsese films obviously had great, you know, inspiration to Todd Phillips and Joker, but I don't know, it kinda copied those movies too, so
And it'd be easier to talk about it in spoiler talk, especially specific scenes,
yeah, I
and
can't,
we'll
like I
we'll
was
we'll
trying to, like,
definitely we'll definitely get into it,
zigzag through spoilers and not say anything.
right? We'll definitely get into it for sure later, but talking about King of Comedy, watching this for the first time again, I went in with no um knowings of the movie. Obviously, I knew about it, but I didn't know what it was about. I tried to stay away from anything online before watching, and I just wanted to go in with an open mind. Obviously, knowing that you thought highly of the film, but you still hadn't told me a lot about what you feel, how it ranks in Scorsese's
Yeah.
catalog. And so I was excited to watch it. Obviously, like we kind of jumped the gun and just was like, we're gonna watch this as soon as we can. So we watched it last night, and not to get into spoilers, great movie. It's again, it follows the main character of Rupert Pupkin, is
Rupert
the
Pupkin, yeah,
which is Robert De Niro's.
everybody, in the movie, like, each character, mispronounces the last name, which is kinda like a running gag through the whole film, but Rupert Pupkin, Pupkin is how it's spelled.
And King of Comedy, I honestly did not see it as a comedy.
No, I don't really think it's a comedy either. I
It's
think
not a
it's
comedy,
more of, like, a drama and a character study of a person and how they
definitely.
develop and change through the film.
And basically, the premise is Rupert Pupkin. See, I'm even doing it, and that's definitely on purpose. But Rupert Pupkin is, like we said, a wannabe comedian, and he's obsessed with Jerry, who is Jerry Lewis, who is a comedian. He has his own
Uh,
talk show.
Jerry Langford is the
Oh,
character.
Jerry Langford,
Jerry Lewis is the actor. It's really confusing.
right? So Rupert is obsessed with Jerry Langford, and who's got his own show. He's a celebrity, and he idolizes him, and he basically wants to be Jerry. He wants
Yeah.
to he wants to have his own talk show. He wants to be a comedian. He wants to sign autographs, and he's just super obsessed with Jerry, and it becomes a lot, to say the least.
Yeah, so Jerry Langford, to put in perspective, he's not like an actor or anything. He's like what Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel are. He's like one of
Or
those
like
like late
David
night
Letterman, more of like
yeah,
a
like one of those like late night shows where they're like hosts and they talk to guests and stuff. And he's like a stand-up comedian, and so that's where Rupert Pupkin is. I keep like I don't know. Robert De Niro, Rupert. They use similar names, so. But what was I saying? So Rupert Pumpkin wants to be a stand-up comedian, and he's like super obsessed with success. And like one of the first scenes in the movie, I guess it's. Should we get into spoiler talk now that we're kind of?
you can kind of explain the first scene of the movie. I don't think it's much of the spoilers come later.
Yeah. So the first scene is like is after the Jerry Langford show wraps filming, which is at night, he is going out to his car and there's a big crowd trying to like get autographs and get pictures and talk to Jerry. And so he's struggling to get in his car. And then Rupert and then another girl named Masha, Masha. I think
Masha.
it's just Masha. I could say it with an accent, but I think it's just Masha. I guess it sounds like an accent without even trying.
It
Masha.
sounds like Marsha, but like Brooklyn.
Masha.
Yeah.
So Rupert and Masha are I guess you don't know yet, but they're like friends and Masha gets in the car that Jerry's gonna get into and like is going crazy because she gets to talk to him, and then Rupert takes advantage of the situation and like pushes people so Jerry could have space and get in the car. And then after Masha gets pulled out of the car, Rupert gets in the car, and so he has the time to talk to Jerry. And the conversation that they have is like Rupert just trying to like get Jerry to put him on the show. And obviously Jerry is like just trying to entertain the situation so he can get out of the car as fast as possible when he gets to his like house or apartment. And yeah, that's the opening scene. It just kind of like paints the picture for the rest of the film and how it's going to go and how Rupert is. It introduces Rupert and you don't really know how obsessive he is yet with the opening scene. You don't know the extent of it, but you quickly like find out as the
That
film
he's
goes
gonna
on.
do well, he's gonna do whatever it takes to get his shot, at least like with Jerry.
Yeah.
And kind of to sum it all up to end spoiler talk, it this movie is more relevant in today's age than it is even back when it was made in the 70s. So, and I think in another 10, 20 years it'll be even more relevant. And I think with Martin Scorsese movies, obviously they're all great, but I think they do a good job of capturing the time that they're being set in.
Yeah.
Talking about Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, even like Wolf of Wall Street, it's such a time capsule of the time where I think King of Comedy is the one that just, as time goes on, it's just going to age better and better and better because just of the subject matter. And that's why I don't think it was as popular when it first came out, because people just didn't really understand and didn't think it was such a big deal. This idea of idolizing celebrities. But you look in today's age, and I mean, that's all we're doing, even more with athletes. But there's just so many scenes in this movie that strike so true to today's age, and even stuff that we can like look within ourselves and kind of reflect on. So watch the movie for that reason alone, of just the message, that we'll get more into, but also it's just a great movie. It's an easy watch, and Robert De Niro is honestly the weirdest thing for me was watching. I mean, you can't tell it's Robert De Niro because he
Yeah, he
plays this
plays
character in every movie that's kind of like tough guy, you know what I mean?
yeah, definitely.
Kind of psycho. And this movie, it's so out of his comfort zone that you don't even understand. Like, I
Yeah,
couldn't
like
recognize him. He's
Robert
unrecognizable as far as his performance. It's so great. It's a great performance.
Robert De Niro in Scorsese movies, he plays like that tough guy, like the gangster, the mob boss, or the weird antisocial guy that nobody wants to talk to. But in this movie, there's so many scenes where you kind of feel embarrassed for Robert De
Yeah,
Niro's character and like feel like sad for him. And that's like you're not used to that as the audience member watching all these, Scorsese and De Niro collabs. You're not used to being embarrassed for Robert De Niro's character because you usually are like so intimidated by him. And it flips the script, and instead of being intimidated by him, you feel the complete opposite.
yeah.
And I guess wrapping up the non-spoiler talk and just kind of going off the themes that you talked about, I mean, I would 100% agree about like just celebrities in this day and age and how relevant the film is and how people worship celebrities, even with like influencers and stuff like that, and how people they want to be famous like them, but they don't really want to do what it takes to be famous. They just want to, They just want to wake up one day and have a bunch of money and have a bunch of attention. And I think attention is the main thing other than the money because attention makes you feel like you're important. And I think that is a big theme of like if you don't have attention, then you don't feel important. Or if you don't have people, a bunch of people know who you are and talking about you, then you're not as important as somebody who doesn't.
Exactly. That self, you need to feel valid in the world, but through what? Not family, not friends, but through just fame of people that you don't even know. You need
Yeah.
kind of validation, self validation. So, yeah, definitely major themes in the movie. And that's, I mean, to watch it alone, technically speaking, it's a great movie. Just watch it. Watch
Yeah.
and form your own
So
opinion.
watch and form your own opinion. This is the end of non spoiler talk. So if you haven't seen the movie and you are interested in watching it, click off now and go watch it. And then I guess now is a good segue into spoiler talk. Do you want to
Absolutely.
since we already explained the first scene, do you want to kind of go into the story a little bit?
Yeah. So I just kind of want to talk about Rupert for a second, just kind of like his character in each scene kind of shows, like you talked about, and we keep saying this, he's willing to do whatever it takes to be famous, but also is he? Because he's not willing to really make his own material. He's not willing to.
I think he makes his own material.
Well, I'm not saying material, but he's not going to shows. He's not doing stand-up comedy like in comedy clubs.
Yeah, so I
He's
guess
he's not
stand
putting
up.
in the hard work like you'd say. But also on the flip side, he's patient, like he's willing to wait for as long as it takes just for an opportunity for something like that. So just kind of go into Rupert, like how would you think of him as a character, and then we can kind of get into the plot a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird because Rupert seems like a guy that would do anything to succeed except what it takes to succeed.
Right.
It's a weird thing that kind of carries on throughout the whole film. And instead of starting from the bottom and working his way up, he's starting from the bottom and wanting to skip the whole journey of getting to be successful. He just wants to be successful as quick as possible, and he doesn't really want to do what it takes. So it's a weird thing of how do you make that jump? And obviously for him, getting in the car, like the first scene, getting in the car with Jerry Langford and having that conversation, he thinks that that is gonna. It kind of like sets up the whole film. Really, it's a great beginning to the film because the conversation he has with Jerry kind of makes the whole film happen because after his conversation, Rupert thinks that he is going to like go to Jerry's office and he's gonna have a conversation and exchange material and then get on the show. And obviously, Jerry Langford was just trying to get him out of the car and tell him what he wants to hear, and that kind of just begins the whole story. So I think
Well,
Rupert
Jerry
is
tells him at the beginning, he says, you have to start from the bottom. That's what he
yeah,
tells Rupert. And Rupert, in his mind, he's just thinking, well, if you just get me on the show, like I can skip all that. If you just get me on
yeah.
the show, like I can show the world who I am. And it's just that self entitlement where he just feels entitled for Jerry to help out a struggling comedian or a wannabe comedian. It's he just feels like Jerry owes it to him because that's where Jerry was. And I just think you hear pretty much every comedian that I know, Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, like they all started in those small improv clubs in LA, in Chicago. Like that's where all great comedians start, is from the bottom. And for Rupert just to kind of think that it's kind of owed to him to be in this place, to that he thinks he can just talk to Jerry and be friends with Jerry, and then that'll make everything okay, is like what you're saying, just entitlement.
Yeah, I don't know much about being a stand-up comedian, but I know that obviously comedy is super hard, even like in films when you're trying to write comedy, because the whole goal is to make people laugh, and so if you miss that, then you completely fail. And so if you have no practice being a stand-up comedian and you wanna be a stand-up comedian, then it's kinda like, what are you doing? And Rupert wants to be a famous stand-up comedian, to be super famous and be on the Jerry Langford Show and be, one of the best. I guess Jerry Langford Show would be, like, the biggest platform to be a stand-up comedian on, and he doesn't wanna, be a stand-up comedian and do the work and do what it takes. He just wants to be on the big stage. So I don't know if he it's like a confusing because do you think he wants to be successful or do you think he wants to be just famous? And where are they, or is it both? Because it changes throughout the film, for me at least.
Yeah, because you kind of get this sense of he kind of looks down on people that work. At least, like, he feels that people that work regular jobs, they're not following their dreams. And his whole thing in his mind, and I guess this is another major theme of the movie is he's mentally ill in some capacity. He has something wrong with him, but yet it's still relatable in a sense of he basically daydreams like Joker. There's a lot of scenes that just aren't real where he's
Yeah.
making up, he's pretending to have dinner with Jerry, and Jerry's asking Rupert for advice. He's like, "Hey man, I need you to take over the show for 6 weeks." And Rupert's talking like, "Dude, you think I got time for that?" Acting like
Yeah.
he's all big time. And in that sense, like, Rupert sees success as fame. So it's kind of that's what it goes both ways, but it's definitely a very interesting character to study because you kind of the more you try to understand him, the more he less makes sense, but also you kind of understand his motivations.
Yeah, he puts these, like, famous people on a pedestal, and he makes it seem like if you aren't famous, then you don't matter. Like
Right.
the scene where he goes on a date with Rita, which is a girl that he knows from high school, to create some context, that's works at a bar. He goes on a date with her after he kind of gets back in touch with her, and if you notice, he only talks about himself. He talks, like, the whole time, and she's kinda just responding to what he says, but he is 100% driving the conversation and talking about himself. And even at the end, he's going through this book of all the autographs he has from famous people, and at the end, he shows her an autograph, and she's like, "What is this?" And he says, "This is my autograph," and gives it to her and says, "This is gonna be worth something one day." So I would even say, like, a form of, like, narcissism,
Yeah,
that he suffers from that,
and it's
but it's
so
weird
weird.
because
Yeah, good.
it's like a form of narcissism from he feels like you're not important if you're not famous, but he's not famous, but he still thinks he's better than other people that aren't famous.
Exactly, because he feels that like chasing his dream, or at least his version of this, makes him above everybody else because you're not you're not you're not chasing your dreams if you're just living regular life. And well, I am, so I'm better than you. So it's this weird thing of he's obsessing over celebrities as well as himself. And you see this like he doesn't have friends, true friends. He thinks he
No.
has all these friends. He doesn't really have a family. I mean, he lives with his mom, but you never see his mom. He's
Yeah.
poor, broke, um, lives just kind of like a sad life, but he just looks past all of that.
Yeah, he is completely, like, engulfed in his journey, or not even journey, just being successful and doing whatever it takes, even if it is embarrassing yourself and, you know, I guess in the end, spoiler, kidnapping Jerry Langford and getting on the show that way. Literally doing anything that it takes to be successful, even if it's ethically speaking, crossing the line and doing something illegal and threatening someone's life with a gun. Anything that it takes, he wants to be successful, which I think of those, like, really dumb YouTube motivational videos, like, you gotta wanna succeed as bad as you wanna breathe, and, like, I always hated that because I thought it was really stupid, but, like, that's kinda like what he does. He wants to succeed above anything else, and he'll do anything that it takes, and he wants to succeed more than anyone else, and I think a great quote that he says is, "I'm gonna work 50 times harder than you, and I'm gonna be 50 times more successful."
Like,
He
that's
says
how it
that.
works. Like, it's a
Yeah,
perfect math equation of if I just work 50 times harder, I'll be 50 times more successful. And I love that scene when he basically breaks into Jerry's like vacation home
yeah,
and he invites Rita. He tells Rita that, we're gonna go see Jerry for the weekend and stay at his house. And he walks in, and obviously the butler has no idea he's there. Jerry has no idea he's there, and that's a huge scene where he kind of turns from that was the pivotal I think that was the pivot scene from him idolizing Jerry to then completely changing to okay, now I don't want to be you, I want to be better than you. And then it just
yeah.
sparks a whole new craze right there.
I mean, I think that was always kind of there because even in the scenes where he was, like, visioning himself as successful,
That's true.
he was always portraying himself to be better than Jerry. Like, when Jerry in the vision scene where Jerry was asking him to be the host of the show for, like, 6 weeks,
Yeah.
he was acting like he was too good for that. He was like even in the vision sequence, he was acting like he was too good for the people that were famous, the people that he was idolizing, which I think is an interesting take. And that whole scene where he shows up to Jerry's house and, like, acts like there's gonna be a party, it's weird because that's kinda set up by a vision sequence where,
hmm I thought it was a
uh
vision sequence for a little bit, to be
yeah,
honest. First time watching
Jerry
it.
so Rupert has a vision where Jerry invites him to go to his, like, vacation home and, like, do, like, a little party or get together lunch thing, and they were gonna discuss, like, material, like, comedic material. And so that's a sequence that's like a vision sequence, and you know it's a vision sequence because
hmm
obviously he doesn't know Jerry, and then they actually go to Jerry's, like, vacation home, and then Jerry, of course, has, like, no idea what's going on, he has no idea who Rupert is, and it's one of the best scenes of the film.
I think so
I
too.
think I
That's what
think
I'm saying.
Robert
It was that pivotal moment of okay, now it's kind of crazy. Like this is something like you kind of see the lengths he's willing to go to, and to
Yeah,
kind of go off what you're saying right there is he has these vision sequences, and it goes into his mental health of he now believes these things that he's dreaming, and
yeah,
there's so many questions to be answered, and I love how they don't answer them of, well, how does he even know where Jerry lives? Like, how does he know that this is his vacation home? Jerry even asks him that. And and those scenes are amazing because you feel so embarrassed and bad for Rupert. I love how the film just makes you do that. Like you still feel for him. You have secondhand embarrassment of like, dude, please shut up, stop talking, but you're just glued to the screen.
yeah, and that scene where he goes to Jerry's house, if you notice, j Rupert is, like, the only one talking the whole time, and, like, psychologically, you're thinking, like, please shut up and just
Mhm.
leave. Please shut up." And he doesn't stop talking. He keeps, like, rambling and, like, making excuses and, like, Yeah, Jerry, you invited me. What are you talking about?" And you're just like, please shut up," until, like, it explodes, the whole situation explodes, and, like, they get in an argument. And I just wanna, like, point out Robert De Niro's acting in this film is incredible. The
Honestly,
t
my favorite performance of his, one of the
the
best performances I've seen of just completely taking over this character.
It is so different from what you usually see with De Niro
Mhm.
that when you see it, it surprises you and it catches you off guard, and it's amazing the whole way through.
That was this
Like
whole movie for me.
his performance is incredible, and he, like, completely takes over the film. I mean, I guess he's the main character, so that's the point, but, like, his performance is amazing.
And I thought Jerry did a good job too. At least you kind of feel for the celebrity as well of you kind of get that behind the scenes. And I know we see this more now, but he walks to work like in a crowd, like a big crowd through New York City. And he does that cuz he feels security. Like he's one of the biggest celebrities at the time, and he's constantly getting attacked by mobs of people wanting his autograph. And he, for the most part, is a good guy, mostly talks to fans, signs autographs, and they just want more and more. I remember there's a scene where this lady's on the phone and she sees Jerry and he's walking to work, and she's like, "Hey, can I get your autograph?" And he's like, "I'm on my way to work. I'm kind of late, but sure." Signs it, and then she's like, "Hey, my brother, he's on the phone. He's sick. Like, can you talk to him for a little bit?" And he's like, "I'm so sorry. I can't. I've got to get to work." And then she just completely she's like, "Well, I hope you get cancer," and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she like completely yells at him, but yet she got an autograph at him. He was nice enough to stop. And it's just that, again, it's that entitlement of we just expect so much from celebrities. And
Yeah.
you kind of feel for Jerry in that sense. But plus, he's got psychos showing up at his house.
Yeah. I think it all goes back to the idea of like worshiping celebrities. And
Hmm.
when you worship a celebrity, you put them on this pedestal and you don't see them as human when they are. So like the only like Justin Bieber and like Drake and all these celebrities that are super famous like around the world, we don't really see them as human when they are. And so when you ask them for an autograph for a picture, and then there's about a million other people that want an autograph in a picture, they realistically like they can't do that. They have to live their life. And I think that's what like Jerry Langford is. He's just like the embodiment of like another famous person. Like even today, everybody wants an autograph, everybody wants a picture, and he has to like live his life. He's one of the quotes that he says is I'm a human being. And I mean, I think that's true. When we
Yeah,
idolize these people that are ultra famous, we forget that they are just regular people.
right.
And I think that's also one of the themes. Obviously, Rupert is the main character, and we follow him. But Jerry is a pretty dominant character in the film. And seeing what he has to go through as a famous person is also just super interesting.
And yeah, exactly. And you don't know his motives. I don't, you don't know if Jerry wants to be famous, but he obviously has fame. And you can kind of, you don't really get into him personally, but he makes people laugh. He's able to interview, other celebrities. I think for the overall, like he just wants to, he's a good guy that has a big platform, and he's not self-obsessed of himself. And so he's kind of painted in this good light, but yet he's idolized by somebody like Rupert, who wants his life, but for just different reasons.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's a good point. We don't know if Jerry even likes being famous.
mhm.
And then you have Rupert who obviously wants to be famous and would do anything to be famous, and he's trying to build a relationship with Jerry who you doesn't he doesn't even seem like he enjoys being famous and the attention and fame.
Yeah, and it's
So I
just
just
it's that juxtaposition.
yeah,
Big word.
big word. So we
So
haven't really
after
like
the yeah, so
we
that's
haven't
what I
really
wanted to
gone
get
through like the
into.
story. We've kind of just been talking about like the main themes and the characters. So I said the first scene of like the whole car scene. Do you want to get into like we can just briefly go over what happens in the film. I think we can skip a
So
lot.
yeah, there's a big chunk of the movie where it's Rupert, and he took an inch from Jerry, basically that car ride. And if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. And so, since that car ride with Jerry, he now feels that he has meetings with Jerry. He's supposed to meet with Jerry, so he goes to Jerry's headquarters, with is his
Office.
building, his
Yeah.
office, and he talks to the receptionist and basically says he has an appointment, which obviously that's not true. And he said it was more of a verbal agreement. So basically, it's just him over the kind of span of a week is coming into this office every single day. I mean, waiting for we don't know how long, but we assume hours upon hours of just waiting for either Jerry or Jerry's assistant, who has a very interesting character. She is basically a, a spokesperson for Jerry as far as Rupert's concerned. So she's asking Rupert for, a tape. She says that she'll try to get with him soon. And basically is giving Rupert advice of like how to actually make it onto the show. And I think for the most part she's pretty genuine, but she obviously knows that they probably get a lot of like crazy fans like this. So she says, "Hey, bring in a tape and we'll give it a listen and we'll give you some feedback." But that's the best way to get onto the show is just give us some material. Don't just show up.
Yeah, so the tape is, like his I guess it shows his material, so it's like a recording of him making jokes, and usually it is supposed to be like a tape of him in a comedy club with, like, an audience reaction, but he kinda takes it up as just a recording of him, like, being on the show, like, he puts, like, the show's intro in the recording and then, like, acts like Jerry's introducing himself, and then he starts his, like, stand-up routine, which I think is a really good scene where he's just, like, acting like he's on the show in the recording, and then the next thing that happens is he goes to the office and gives him the tape, and it's a really good interaction between him and the secretary or the assistant girl of, like, back and forth of, like, "When am I gonna hear back about this tape? When is Jerry gonna listen to this?" And she says, "Probably tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, probably Monday." And he's like, "No, I'll wait just to see if Jerry comes and listens to this." And
And she's like, "Take a hint, buddy."
yeah, but she's super polite about it, which is super cool, which you might not see that today. You might.
Yeah.
It's just like another one of those scenes where like Rupert is more and more shown to be like completely willing to do anything, even like embarrass himself in front of a whole like office to get what he wants. So that's the tape. What happens after the tape?
Well, she gets back to him. She listens
Yeah,
to the tape.
he comes back the next day.
Yeah.
4:30 is when he comes back.
And she tells him, "Hey, I listened to the tape and I think it'd be better if you recorded, in front of a live audience, see how your jokes hit." She listens to the tape. She tells him that, his punchlines could use some work, but he's got good timing. She gives him good critical feedback where it's good, some bad. Here's how you can improve, and we see a lot of potential in you, and we could definitely see you on the show. But
She gives him the truth.
yeah, she gives him the truth of,
Like she's completely honest.
hey, you're funny. I like some of your jokes. Some of them didn't land. I think you need to improve, and I think you need to see what you're like in front of an actual audience first, and maybe you'd be a little more comfortable. And he wanted the truth from her, and he's like, okay, I can work with that. And then he asked her, he's like, are you speaking for Jerry? And she says yes, meaning that Jerry didn't listen to the tape, but that Jerry trusts her insight on comedy. And you can kind of go into what he says to that, but I think that's a very interesting scene, and he's completely out of pocket for this.
Yeah, once he kind of like asks that question, like, "Are you speaking for Jerry?" and she says yes, he then kind of just completely switches and is like, "No, I want to talk to Jerry about this instead of you. I want to hear Jerry's thoughts coming from Jerry, not coming from you." And so he gets kicked out, and then after he gets kicked out, he's like sitting in front of the building, the office building, like eating a sandwich, and then Masha comes in from like nowhere and is like, "Jerry is in the building. I saw him walk in." And everybody was telling him, like, "Rupert, Jerry's not here, you can't talk to him." They're obviously lying. So, it's this incredible scene of, like, Rupert runs into the office building and goes to the back, looking for Jerry and, like, yelling Jerry's name, and the security guards are trying to chase him and get him, and he's, like, running around the building, and then he gets kicked out, and after he gets kicked out, they're, like, making fun of him, and they throw, like, his briefcase, and then Masha comes up to him and is like, "You got kicked out." He's like, "No, I didn't get kicked out. They just,
Mhm.
uh, escorted me out," and it's just this, like, funny interaction between Rupert and Masha, because
He's
Rupert
so
thinks
detached from reality at this
yeah,
point.
Rupert thinks Masha is, like, crazy, but really, in reality, they're both insane, and he's acting like she's the crazy one, but they're both insane because 'cause they're both obsessed with Jerry Langford.
Mhm.
So that's, like, the tape scene, and then he goes over and then it's the scene where he goes over to the vacation house, right?
Right. Yeah, right. He goes into the vacation house, and then that was kind of the final string before he literally kidnaps Jerry. Him and Masha kidnap Jerry
With a fake gun.
with a fake gun, and you know it's it's not this movie's not a comedy. And what's really interesting that I found is I was so curious for most of the movie. You don't you're curious to see if he's actually funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because he doesn't you don't hear any of his stand up for the most part, even when he's doing his little bits at home recording his own tape. He doesn't get into his comedy. He doesn't
yeah,
get into the actual jokes. And that's why I think it's definitely more about fame than it is comedy, because he's so obsessed with like presentation than he is actual substance. And that's, I mean, that's his life too. He On the outside he's got real quirky outfits, he dresses like Jerry, but on the inside there's no actual you don't know if he's actually funny. You don't know, you don't really get to see him as a genuine person. It's just this his whole life's just like an act. But that goes into, doing his bits. And I think this movie's not a comedy, but there's really funny parts, really funny
yeah.
scenes when he gets out to. So their how they kidnap Jerry is they pull up next to him in a car, and he gets out, basically holds him by gunpoint and tells him to get into the car, and then they drive to Mosh's house. But when he gets out of the car, he drops his gun. Like it's this big thing where he like drops the gun like in front of the car, and he has to run around and get it. And then once they kidnap Jerry, they make Jerry call his management team, and he's got these cue cards, and the cue cards are, some of them are out of order. He doesn't
Yeah,
flip
that
them in
scene
time.
that
It's
scene
so
is
funny.
great where he like, the cue card is, like,
Are so
backwards
massive.
or it's
They're so
upside
big.
down, and
Yeah.
he also Jerry makes the comment after he reads all the cue cards, like, "They weren't grammatically correct, but I think you got the point."
It was so funny. That's
Jerry
why I
is Jerry's low key really funny with the comments that he makes, but yeah, just what happened. Like the movie, it definitely isn't a comedy, but there is some really funny points. And the whole
and
kidnapping scene where like he drops the gun after he gets out of the car and then picks it up, and then Jerry's like, "What is going on?" And he just get in the car, just get in the
and
car.
in his outfit, he's wearing like these oversized glasses and like a Hawaiian shirt and in like a fedora. It's just funny. It's a really funny whole
Like
scene
you
where he
obviously
kidnaps
know that these people have not ever done this before.
exactly. And then you can kind of see this movie's influence on other movies. Like you see kind of the same gags that obviously started with this movie. When they tape Jerry up in the chair, it's just so much tape
Yeah, they
that
just
doesn't
no, they show Rupert putting like the first thing of tape, and it just is like the middle of his chest, and it's just one piece of tape connected to the chair that would obviously not hold one, like it would not hold somebody there.
exactly.
And then it cuts, and there's like so much tape around his body tied to the chair, and it's comedy.
And there's this whole scene where so Jerry's whole basically why Jerry is kidnapped is because Rupert kidnaps him and basically holds him hostage so that Rupert can be on Jerry's show, and
Yeah.
basically is willing to basically get arrested after the show in order to get his 15 minutes of fame on the show. So that's what he's doing. He contacts the show, and they kind of have this arrangement of, okay, you tell us where Jerry is and we'll let you on the show, we'll let you do your monologue, we'll let you do your stand up.
Yeah.
And he completely is fully aware that afterwards, like, he's going to get charged, he's going to
Yeah.
go to jail, FBI's involved, all this
It's
stuff.
actually it's actually a funny thing because like, they think that he has some alternative motive other than, like, doing, like, the stand-up, and he's just like, "No, I kidnapped Jerry. I did it."
Exactly.
And they're, like, super confused as, like, why he did it, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it. I just wanted to be on the show."
And
And
it
they
worked.
just it worked, yeah, and so his, like, deal that he makes with the Jerry Langford Show crew is, "If you don't put me on the show when I'm not, like, live to an audience on TV, then Jerry's gonna die." But Jerry obviously isn't gonna die because they don't even have a real gun. It was just kind of like a ploy to get on the show for
Yeah.
Rupert. And Masha was a part of it because she just wanted alone time with Jerry, which is, like, a super like, the scenes are, like, intercut together, so Masha and Jerry, that scene is, intercut with Rupert, being on the show and being, like, interrogated and then doing a stand-up, which is super cool. It's a really cool technique. And so Rupert says that when I get there, I'm gonna be nicknamed the King. So that's how you know when I'm there. So when he gets there, he says, "I'm the king." And then they kind of like interrogate him, the FBI and like the police, head of police is there. And then it's also at the same time, Masha is like talking to Jerry and having like dinner with him while he's like taped up. And it's like a super weird, like, because she's like a teenager.
Exactly.
And but she's like completely obsessed with Jerry and she's just like talking to herself. Like it's really funny because she's talking the whole time and Jerry looks like he just looks so uncomfortable and he does not say a word until the very end where he tricks her into removing all the tape and then he like smacks her and runs out.
He
And
tries to
then
shoot her, and the gun just like pops, like
yeah,
it's a
it's like a dart gun.
yeah.
Like the funny shot is he shoots it, finds out it's a dart gun, and then shoots her in like the chest. And it kind of just like obviously is like it looks like a Nerf gun, but it's obviously not a Nerf gun. Just kind of
Yeah,
hits her, and then her face reaction is just like really, really funny.
it's really
A-
funny.
And then he like walks up to her, looks her dead in the eye, and then smacks her and runs.
Hmm.
And then while this is happening, uh, Rupert is on the show doing his stand up, and you don't get to see it as it's happening. You just get to see him walk on the show and then walk off, which is I originally thought was like, are we really not going to see this guy's whole like the build up for this? Are we really not going to get to see his stand up act?
Exactly.
And I was
That would have
like,
made me
are you
so
kidding me?
mad.
And then
And then you find out he actually, it's going to be aired later that night,
yeah,
and he runs over to the bar that Rita works at, who is this person that he's apparently in love with, but really he just wants another person to see him famous. Is he just wants her validation of just seeing him famous, because that's what he called. He called his shot. Hey, I'm going to be on the show, and now it's actually happening. So he goes there and he goes up to the TV and he like switches it to the channel that he's going to be on, and that's where you see his monologue, and you're kind of watching it with everybody for the first time,
yeah.
which is
As
dope.
as it's really as it's played on TV live is when we get to watch it as the audience. So I think that's super cool.
Genius.
Yeah. But I also want to say that we forgot to add, it's kind of like a small detail. When Rupert originally goes on a date with Rita, so they kind of knew each other from high school, but Rupert was quiet. He said, "What's the quote about being an adult? Do you remember it? I don't want to like misquote it."
Um, so he's basically talking how it's weird that when you're 15 or back in high school, how you're afraid to say things that right now is like completely normal as adults. So like you're afraid to like talk to somebody when you're kids, but when you're adults, it's completely normal
Yeah.
to talk to each other. That's kind of the idea of his quote, but that's not his quote verbatim.
Yeah, it's just like when you're a kid, you're scared to say things, and then when you're an adult, you're not scared, but it's too late.
Right. Exactly.
But also, just like he says, "I love you" on the like hasn't
Yeah.
seen this girl for like I don't know how long, and then it's like, "I love you." I thought that was super funny. But anyways, so he's in the bar, and that's kind of like the final part of the deal is he wants Rita and to watch him on TV on the
Hmm.
Jerry Langford show because he this whole time acts like he's Jerry's friend, and she believes him because he's super manipulative. And then she's like, "Wow, he's actually on the show." So I don't know if she actually knows the truth or not. If he was ever Jerry's friend, because they go to the house together. Jerry's like vacation home, but then like the next week he's on the show. So I guess it comes out later after.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the monologue,
Hmm.
the stand up act. The stand up act is I thought it was incredible, an incredible scene, but it's also kind of a really really sad scene because previously in the film there's like a vision sequence where Jerry's talking to Rupert, and one of the things he says about his material is it's or Rupert says that it's stuff that he takes negative stuff from his past and turns it into something funny.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what he does. He gives this monologue or this stand-up act, and he talks about all these terrible things that have happened in his life, but he makes jokes about them. And every single joke lands.
Yeah.
And it's like at the end of the film, the whole journey that Rupert has taken to get to this point, I felt like super happy for him, even though he's like not a very good person, super obsessive. Like
Yep.
I felt like he did it, even if it was like the worst way possible to do it. So I felt like this sense of being proud, but it was weird because he like had to
Yeah,
kidnap Jerry.
you feel for him for sure at the end because you just see him just get embarrassed, and his life, like we're watching it from a lens where we know everything that Jerry's doing, or not Jerry, Rupert's doing is wrong, and he's narcissistic, he's arrogant, he literally kidnaps Jerry, like, but you feel for him, you feel bad for him, and when he does his monologue and you see all these jokes hit, but then you also see the truth behind each joke of he was basically bullied his whole life. His
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 parents were
mom's yeah,
alcoholics.
his parents were alcoholics, and you just feel for him. You're like, "Oh my gosh, like that's why it's such a cool character to study and go through his life cuz you just see."
Because you never really know his past until the end when he gives his monologue. And so you really just think he's kind of a normal guy that's obsessed with being famous. But I think after listening to what he says, I think he sees being famous as a getaway from, or I guess he sees being famous as like a way to turn, a way for his past, his dark past, to have like purpose.
Mhm.
So he went through all those bad things so he could then be a comedian and then be like a famous comedian.
Right. And then the famous uh he even says during his monologue that like he kidnapped Jerry, and
Yeah,
everybody thinks it's a joke. He's like, yeah, Jerry couldn't make it tonight, he's tied up, and I tied him up, and
yeah.
he's
He's
just
in the middle of
doing
the city,
he's in the middle of the city, and he's being completely honest, but everybody's just laughing, and
and then
all
he's
the
like, "No,
jokes are hit,
you'll find out tomorrow when it comes out."
and it's like everybody just thinks he's doing a bit, but then at the very end he talks about it, and he knows that basically he's going to jail. He acknowledges that, and he says that he'd rather be a king for a night
Then a schmuck for life.
than a schmuck for life.
That's like the whole quote that encapsulates, like, the whole movie. I love that quote, "Better to be a king for a night than a schmuck for life." I don't know if I'll ever live by that, because I
But then
think
you
that's,
then
like
you realize, okay, like he seemed insane the whole movie, but now you understand because of that quote, he he didn't care if, you know, everything leading up basically didn't matter as long as he got, you know, his shot. And he got
yeah,
his shot.
nothing
And now he's debatably like super famous
yeah, so
because
nothing he
this
went through,
monologue
like,
skill.
how much he was embarrassed throughout the film and his bad past with his family, which we learn about, like, nothing of that matters to him now that he's on the show. Like, now that he's on the show and he made it, and he did his stand-up act, like, he's won, basically.
Yep.
And then after he is on the show and it kinda ends that whole scene, it cuts to him being in jail, like a news, uh, what is it called? A news I don't know, them talking about him on the news and how famous he is now because the whole story was crazy, and he releases, like, a book, and so many magazines are made about him. He's on, like, Time Magazine and all these
Yep. And he works on his material while he's in jail. And
and he
he
was
gets off
sentenced
on probation, or he was
he was
sentenced to like
sentenced to 6
6 years.
years, but he gets off in 2.
Yeah, it's like 2.5. And then it ends with him, you know, coming out with this book, and you kind of see towards the end, like you kind of wonder, does he have his own show now? Because he's, you know, he like walks out from the curtains and all the lights are on him, so you kind of assume that he has his own show. But then you think, kind of like Joker, okay, is this real or is this fake?
I think it's real because I don't think they would go through the whole sequence of him being famous with all, like, the books, like, the autobiography and then the magazines where he's on every single cover, and then it turns out he's, like, it's not real. 'Cause every scene that he is, like, envisioning that's not real, he's, like, in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And he's not in those sequences, which I think that's a big hint of it could be real. But then the very end, you just don't know.
He walks out onto, like, a nice stage,
Yeah.
and he's just getting, like, applauded the whole time before he even starts his act, and the movie ends right before he says a word,
Hmm.
and I think that's, like, a perfect ending because
Yeah.
it's, like, this
Structurally,
whole journey of Rupert being famous and how the non-traditional way that he went to be famous, and he did whatever it takes to be famous. He was a king for a night, and it actually worked out in the end. Because it's weird. You, you would imagine that somebody that does all this to fail, because in real life it would fail. Actually, I don't know if this was a true story or not. That'd be insane. But this wouldn't work. Like, nobody can
no.
just do this, and then they would be famous and then get out of jail and then be famous. So I just think this is like a super interesting story.
It was incredible. It was awesome to watch. This is definitely one that I'm gonna go back and watch a couple more times. I'm gonna try to own this one just because
It's
again it's
kind of
so
hard to
relevant.
find.
Yeah, it is. And it's just so it was so interesting and it's funny again, like I said, but it's not like a traditional comedy. Um, but what I heard in an interview with Scorsese and Robert De Niro is they didn't work on another movie together for like 7 or 8 years because it was just so. This movie apparently was so draining for the both of them, just to
Really.
just to get this message across. And I guess Robert De Niro's performance it took a lot out of him because Scorsese said this. He said each scene, each take, they probably on average did 30 to 40 takes each scene.
Wow. That's crazy.
And which is
And there
honestly
was a lot of
insane.
takes where they were super long too.
Yeah, it was super long takes, and that's why it was so draining for both of them. Obviously, De Niro being the main character, but I can just imagine because they would do the same. Obviously, they have the script, but they do it okay. You know, say it kind of this way, kind of funny. Say it serious, and I think it just makes for ultimately. like definitely worth it. Like perfect movie as far as you know how the characters portrayed, the structure of the film is is so tight and perfect, kind of.
Yeah, this movie was really, really well made. I mean, Martin Scorsese is one of the best directors, if not, I mean, people debate him as the best director.
Hmm.
So of course it's going to be good. And Robert De Niro is one of the best actors living. So, I think when they collab and they go all in, it makes for an incredible movie. And you've seen that with all the other movies that they've done together.
Yeah.
But this one is definitely slept on, I feel like. This one is
Oh,
one of the better ones in my opinion. This is one
this
is
could be
maybe
this could go up as like the best Scorsese film, just because. And it's so
I
weird
love
because
yeah.
it's PG. I mean, it's not what you think of as a Scorsese film. I mean, it's deep and so complex, even for as simple as it is. But I mean, there's no blood, there's no violence really. There's no bad language. It's a PG movie, like I said. So it was so interesting that they were able to get so much, and it's basically it's a better Joker. You know what I mean?
It is a better Joker.
It's
So the
it's
thing
just
that I would wrap up on is if you really like Joker, I don't want to take away from that movie because it was done incredibly well. This is a better Joker. This is what
yeah.
I would say. I think it's just made better. It's more realistic.
Yeah,
It is
oh,
better.
absolutely. It's more realistic, and it obviously it does everything Joker does, but better.
And the themes that it tackles, they convey them a lot better and they're a lot more personal. I think they connect with the audience more.
Yeah, and it's so relevant nowadays. It's crazy, and it's honestly we can start getting into ratings now. Um, I think I know what you're gonna give it, but
Yeah.
it's hard for me because I think, like you said about Donnie Darko, I have to watch it a couple more times to really sit with me and to put it up there with these 5-star movies that I see. This
I gave
movie,
Donnie Darko a 4.5, and I think if I rewatch it, I'm gonna wait a little bit,
yeah,
maybe like a month or two, to rewatch it. But I think if the second viewing is just as good as the first, I'll give it a 5 stars.
hmm
But it's
and
still 4.5 right now.
this is a perfect combination of everything I'm looking for in a movie because one of my favorite movies of all time, a absolute 5-star, is Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, and this is a very similar. It's a success story of a dude that's absolutely psycho.
Yeah,
Nightcrawler being maybe a little more psycho, but just doing whatever it takes to succeed. And it's a perfect parallel with Nightcrawler, which is a 5 out of 5. But I just want to let this one sit a little longer. But I'm going 4.5 for sure because it's. I mean, other than that, just a perfect movie as far as structure, like we talked about, character, and I think if I watch it a couple more times, it'll definitely be one of my favorites of all time. So 4.5
yeah.
stars for me.
I watched it a while ago. I think like last year actually.
Mhm.
So I've had it in my mind for a while, and so when we watched it last night, it was the second time I've seen it. But I already knew that I liked it, and rewatching it for the second time, I think it just kind of supported everything that I already felt originally. And I don't think I would recommend you a bad movie. So this is a
No,
5 star for me.
exactly.
Of course, I would recommend a 5 star. Why would I recommend anything less? And yeah, this is a 5 star for me. I think Joker for me is maybe 4 stars, but this is just everything that I would have wanted. I think it's just better. So if
Yeah.
you love Joker, obviously no hate. If you love Joker and you watch this film and you like Joker better, that's fine. That's
I love
completely fine.
Joker. I
I
love
still
Joker.
love Joker. I've seen Joker probably 10 times.
Joker's phenomenal. And the same, it's so hard. And honestly, we could do another half an hour about this, but it's so weird because it's exactly like what is that line of admiration versus just completely stealing. And I think if you obviously he respects Scorsese and like takes a lot of influence. But I mean, the more you think about it, this whole movie is just not shot for shot, but I mean the sequences of, is it real life, is it fake, the ending, the, the whole comedy thing, the talk show. It's, I mean, it's basically the same movie boiled down.
Yeah,
But King of Comedy just does it better and was
I think
original.
a good thing to end on is if you're gonna steal from Martin Scorsese, make sure you're making a better film. And in
Yeah.
this case, in my opinion, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
I think that
Well,
was good. I think we'll leave this on a cliffhanger for the next episode. We're gonna just be doing a couple more movies, probably till the release of Batman, which is gonna be huge. So just be on the lookout for another episode. This one was fun. I'm glad you got your a good mic back.
yeah, hopefully it sounds good. I'm gonna be really upset if it doesn't.
So
We're not gonna preview the next movie for next week, are we? Or for the next
no, I
episode?
say I say we go in. I think because we don't know right now, so
Yeah, all right.
let's leave it up. Let's leave a surprise. So
We might throw like a survey out there on like an Instagram story to see if you guys have watched a movie or not. I think
it's
we
a good
should do
idea.
a movie that people have actually seen.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe a movie. Oh wow, that was really bad. Voice crack. Maybe a movie that we haven't seen that everybody else seemingly has seen.
That's what I'm thinking, or something that maybe we've watched but didn't really pay attention to. I don't know. We'll let the people decide. Maybe. If you made it this far, thank you for the support. Thank you for the feedback. If you're giving it, shout out to your dad. High
Yeah,
praise.
my dad loved it.
So
Um,
that's good.
if you guys returned for episode 2, thank you so much. We're gonna be making more episodes. We don't really have a schedule. I think we just kind of watch movies and then make the episode after we watch the movie. So the schedule is going to be a little bit random. This is the second episode we're recording in the same week, but we can usually just pump these out. They're not that hard to make.
No, I mean, an easy.
Um,
We said we'd be quicker than Donnie Darko, and I think we're running at about the same time. So
yeah, we said this would be
shorter.
shorter episode, but it is not. So, oh well. Thank you guys for watching.
Watch and form your own opinion. As
Watch
always.
and form your own opinion. Watch King Comedy. I recommend it. And come back for episode 3 where we talk about something else.